concert, did one scandal after another, and I think it just chipped away at Giuliani one step at a time. And for once, the National Press Corps really went out and did some solid investigative work on a candidate. And this is important. Now it may seem in retrospect like Rudy Giuliani's a footnote to the campaign, but there was a substantial reason to believe that just like it's wise for Democrats to nominate a Southerner, it might be wise for Republicans to nominate a Northeasterner with his kinds of credentials, and that he could have been a formidable candidate in November.
He certainly could be a vice presidential?
I can't imagine it if McCain is the nominee, because they both have these strong national security supposed credentials. I mean, I think you can say legitimately that McCain has some. He spent as many years in a prisoner of war camp as Rudy got deferments in the Vietnam War. I think, you know, so I can't imagine that that's much of a match. I think McCain is going to be looking for a Southerner, maybe a Midwesterner. But I think they're going to, and I think they're going to write off the Northeast. But, you know, Rudy could have been a substantial candidate. So the fact that he failed may have significant implications in this election year.
What do you think is the most significant thing to understand about Rudolph Giuliani for people around the country and the world?
Well, you know, he had this interview with the Tampa Tribune, which decided, its conservative paper, decided to endorse McCain. And it got no attention anywhere else. But I read this editorial where they endorsed McCain, and they said when Rudy appeared before them, they asked him, well, what are you going to do about al-Qaeda and these loose organizations of terrorists? How can you stop them? And he said, and this is a direct quote, I'm going to take out the nation states that support them. Well, now that's about 4 or 5 wars. You know, so the most important thing is, now McCain is in competition for that title. But I think Rudy Giuliani was the most reckless guy. He said, if Iran pursues its nuclear program, we're going to set them back 5 to 10 years. It was the war rhetoric of Rudy Giuliani, which is completely consistent with his public personality of many, many years, that was the most frightening thing. And the fact that it's off the stage is very important.
Jim DeFede, can you explain on the Democratic side exactly why Florida didn't count, but Hillary Clinton counted it as a big victory?
Well, Florida moved its primary up to January 29 in defiance of the Democratic National Committee, which said no state can move up earlier than February 5. Florida went ahead and did it anyway, led by the Republican legislators, but it was also some Democrats in the legislature that wanted it moved up as well to be more important in the process. So Florida got stripped of all of its delegates. Hillary needed something to change the conversation. She didn't want to keep talking about South Carolina. They didn't want the story to continue to be about Bill Clinton's role in the campaign. They needed some good news. You know, they just saw the coronation of Kennedy passing the torch on to Obama, so they needed something to grab the attention. So they knew they were going to win in Florida. The polls had Hillary well ahead because neither candidate was campaigning here, and so Hillary came down late last night around 8:45, flew into South Florida after the polls closed, and held a big rally for herself, a big welcoming party, and she got exactly what she wanted. All the networks cut in to sort of show her on stage with flag waving and sign waving and all the rest of it. So she got to sort of change the thing. And then again, there's always the most overused word in both in politics and sports, momentum. She hopes that this will translate into momentum heading into Super Tuesday.
Finally, Wayne Barrett, as we head into Super Tuesday, New York, can you talk about the significance here of both for the Democrats and Republicans where you see things lining up?
Well, let me just add to what Jim said about Florida. I think I just found it amazing to watch the national coverage of this last night. More people voted in Florida in the Democratic primary than have voted in all the primaries that preceded this. And yet everybody's willing to totally dismiss the outcome as if it's totally unimportant. I mean, 2 million people, nearly 2 million people voted. We always wondered what the race between Hillary and Rudy would be like. She beat him by 600,000 votes, and she never entered the state during the election campaign. So I think the outcome in Florida is immensely important in terms of the national race. We should pay attention to a couple of million voters. It's not completely unimportant. That's why we have a democracy. But in terms of New York, I certainly think McCain is going to roll through New York. I think he's going to roll through February 5th. And I certainly think he's going to be the nominee. New York, I think, because it's in the Democratic primary, it's congressional district by congressional district. And I fully expect that Barack Obama is going to carry some New York congressional districts and come out of here with some delegates. I certainly expect, and most of the polls indicate, that Hillary will carry the state. But this is by congressional district, and so it's a pretty, he will come out of here with some delegates. Now, there are about 130 at-large delegates, super delegates in the state of New York that are going to be selected by the party. Those are all going to turn out to be, virtually uniformly, are going to turn out to be Hillary delegates because the party establishment is going to select them. So there's only 151 delegates up for battle. And I fully expect that Obama will do reasonably well among those 151 delegates.
And Wayne Barrett, what are you going to do with your life? You finished 2 books on Rudolph Giuliani. What happens next?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you how happy I am that these fingers may never type that name again.
Wayne Barrett, a senior editor at The Village Voice, latest book, Grand Illusion, The Untold Story of Rudy Giuliani and 9/11. Jim DeFede with us from Florida, host of the news show and radio station WFTL in South Florida. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. When we come back, we sit down with an opposition leader in Pakistan, Imran Khan. Stay with us.